Hare Krishna. I welcome all the parents and teachers to yet another session of our parenting webinar series. The name of the series is Empowering Parents and Teachers in the Changing Scenario. So we take our journey of this series ahead with yet another speaker who is a pioneer in homeschooling. She is a disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. She began her Krishna consciousness in Chicago in her early 1980s. Also in 1986, she started an ISKCON temple in Boise, USA, and the deities are very beautiful and now named as Sri Sri Radha Bake Bihari Ji. Mataji and her husband, His Grace Anantarupa Prabhuji, they homeschooled their children, two children, and both of them are now PhD holders from Oxford University. I welcome Her Grace Aruddha Mataji to our session. Her Grace Aruddha Mataji, she travels across the world and she is world famous for her seminars on Krishna conscious homeschooling. So, and also, very interesting thing is she is the author of the book Homeschooling Krishna's Children and a series of book which is Srimad Bhagavatam, a comprehensive guide for young readers. We'll be discussing about both these books at the end of the session also. So once again, please join me in welcoming Her Grace Aruddha Mataji to the session. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining us. We look forward to hear from you on the topic today, that is teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to children. Hare Krishna, Mataji, you're on mute. I think Neelam Mataji will have to unmute Mataji.
Mataji, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I did. Hare Krishna, can you hear me now?
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, everyone. So nice to be here today among all of you. I've heard so wonderful things about your community and the community in the Delhi area. As you know, my Guru Maharaj is His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and I have received a lot of opportunities to travel there and visit many temples. Thank you for inviting me. And today I will be sharing with you a seminar on studying Srimad Bhagavatam with our children. So this seminar will be divided into three parts. The first part will be the spiritual benefits of studying Srimad Bhagavatam. The second part will be the academic benefits. And the third part will be the methodology that we can use for teaching our children, a practical workshop that I will take you through different age groups of children and how to teach them Srimad Bhagavatam. So I want to begin by sharing with you some quotes by Srila Prabhupada. Somehow the screen is locked up here. Fortunately, I cannot seem to move the screen. Hare Krishna Mataji, I'm having a problem with the screen here.
Mataji, the screen, that means you can't even share it with us so that we can share it now. The screen is blocked. The whole screen is blocked.
Yeah, okay.
Mataji, try it once more. Please try it again.
Yeah, I'm trying here. Yep.
Maybe
Okay. Yeah. So
you can see the screen now.
yeah, you see it now? Yeah. Oops. Okay. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So I would like to share, sorry about this waiting. So I would like to share some quotes by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada emphasized the study of Srimad Bhagavatam not only among adults but also with children. As we know, there's three things that Srila Prabhupada really emphasized, and that was book distribution, deity worship, and Gurukula. Prabhupada wanted children in the Gurukula to actually read his books, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm going to read to you these quotes. So I would like you to listen very carefully. Our students, specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school, Dallas, and from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you will get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is the topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. So we understand that having read Prabhupada's, in Lilamrit, his struggles in coming to, to going to the West and introducing Srimad Bhagavatam to the world out there was very much, right? Even when he took the ship, when he boarded the ship Jaladuta, he was trying to sell his books and he had 2 heart attacks. And in spite of this, he didn't give up, right? Who would have blamed him if he came back to India and stayed in Vrindavan? But no, Prabhupada understood the importance of giving this knowledge to the world at large. He began to construct temples only later. His first mission was to print these books and to distribute them widely. There are stories of how devotees were distributing Srimad Bhagavatam as they were being published. They were distributing all the way to 9th canto and then the Krishna book. Prabhupada knew that these books would revolutionize the misdirected civilization today. My own story began with when I actually started thinking about the education of my children. When they turned 5, I tried, public schools for some time, for a couple of years, and was quite disappointed with what I saw. It was actually a private school in the beginning, and I would go and volunteer some time. And I was very disappointed, both academically and also the values that they were picking up there. I remember one time when I was there, my younger son told me one time that when he was in his classroom, his teacher would come and her boyfriend would also come. Of course, in America, we see a lot more than what you would see in India. However, these problems are existing everywhere, and they would behave intimately in front of the children, right? And then also academically, my older son, when he would, in his class one time when he was doing his math work, he finished, 20 minutes early, and he was sitting there bored. So I understood that actually public schools are meant for the average. If your child is above average, then he's bored. If he's below average, he's pretty much neglected. So in this way, I was quite disappointed, and I thought, why not try an alternative system? At that time, homeschooling was a fairly new concept within ISKCON, and so I was quite nervous actually. And so I decided to actually try the homeschooling. I bought a homeschooling curriculum and I decided to try it for just the months in summer. I thought, why don't I try it? And if it works, I'll continue. Otherwise, I'll send them back to school. And what I was amazed is that within 3 months, I could actually finish the entire curriculum of that year in 3 months. And the children were not studying too much. They were studying about 2 hours a day. So I started getting quite confident that actually I can do this without any problem. And also one thing that I really wanted to do is to share my values with them, my Krishna conscious values with them. And I know all of us have that ambition that even if they're going to school, we have a great desire to share those values. But when they were going to school, there was hardly any time. They came back with a different frame of mind. And it took a long time to try to get them into a devotional frame of mind. So when I began homeschooling, I had that time. I was able to give them teach them Prabhupada's books and also give them a practical devotional service. With the result that what was amazing is that within 3 years, within 6 years, they were able to master practically a good language skills through Srimad Bhagavatam. As you know, Prabhupada is saying here that his books are more than MA PhD. So his books can train a child in language skills, which will be more than MA PhD. It's just so happened that accidentally my children went to college early. And even though they were 6 years younger than all the other kids, they had no problem studying the other subjects, in school, such as sociology, psychology, philosophy, anthropology. And I was very surprised. And because all I had taught them was from Srila Prabhupada's books, mainly Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the basis of their curriculum. But yet they were excelling in all the other subjects. So we understand that Srimad Bhagavatam, like Prabhupada is saying in these quotes, that one can get all knowledge completely. And when we give them this foundation of Srimad Bhagavatam right from the beginning, then it provides a good foundation for all other subjects. So that when they do have to study other subjects in outside schools, they're not misled into materialistic or atheistic thinking because of their solid background in the Vedic perspective of life. So in other words, Srimad Bhagavatam covers all subject matters. And it's also easier to study Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because they're given in the form of stories. As we know, especially Srimad Bhagavatam is the story of great personalities. And when children learn from these great personalities, their character rubs on them. And as they get older, they also begin to appreciate the instructions. Children need good role models in life. Prabhupada mentions how only 50 years ago, influential people in India, they send their children to Gurukula. Now, Gurukula used to be just for the 10 years of a child's life. But those 10 years were very, very crucial because children are learning by imitation. Children are learning by examples. So when they see live examples in front of them, devotees who are actually who exemplify the good character and good qualities, then these rub on them. As you know, even Lord Chaitanya, he taught by example. He wrote only 8 verses in the Shishastika, but mainly he was teaching us by example, because example is more powerful than precept. And when children are given good examples in front of them, they tend to imbibe those things in their life. So we can see that through these examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the children are able to develop good character. Now, and Prabhupada said that this whole world is today, he said, is full of debauchees, people with very loose moral character, even people who have great education,
who are very highly educated and have and a lot of money, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have good character. But Vedic education is different. Vedic education can give us qualities such as self-control, tolerance, mercy, and compassion. And when children develop these qualities, they become happy. It's a formula for happiness. Otherwise, we can give them everything else, but like Prabhupada said, it's like decorations on a dead body. So now in Srimad Bhagavatam, just how can we teach them good character? Srimad Bhagavatam is full of good examples, isn't it? Examples, such as Parikshit Maharaj, where, we learn from that example qualities such as humility. In spite of being so powerful spiritually and materially, he could have easily reversed the curse that he received to die in 7 days, but he chose not to do. Why? Because he understood that it was Krishna's desire. It was Krishna's desire. And he wanted to also give due respect to the Brahmin community. But for himself, he did not care, right? So, but then at the same time, we see the same king, he showed qualities of good leadership, how he dealt with Kali and how he, he dealt with him in a way that, that controlled his behavior, but at the same time, he dealt with him with compassion, right? So this question of tolerance is this character of mercy, this character of compassion and humility can be just understood just through one story. And there's stories and stories after that in Srimad Bhagavatam that exemplify these qualities, Then, of course, qualities such as, the quality of Vritasura, and Indra and Vritasura, Indra, Brahaspati and Vritasura in the 6th canto is such a wonderful section where children can learn that how to see everybody equally, irrespective of birth, and scholarship or beauty. These qualities are just external. And how even a person born in a very low caste family can be an exalted devotee like Vritasura. And in this way, and of course, this is a story of Dhruva Maharaj, the quality of gratefulness, right? That how he was so grateful to his mother, even after 36,000 years, he did not forget her, right? And the interaction with her was about 5 minutes when she instructed him to take the right steps, when he was very upset with his stepmother who had treated him very harshly, right? And these qualities, like if you were to teach your children these qualities of gratefulness and kindness and compassion, it's very, very difficult, isn't it? Because I remember when I grew up, obviously I grew up in India, and I happened to go to a convent, and there we had a class called moral science class. And the first class was all about how to be moral. And, it was a Christian school. So they taught about the 10 commandments. And I remember we never paid attention. It would go from one year and it would just go out from the other year. But when one reads it through Srimad Bhagavatam, these stories and the example and the lessons that we learn from these stories go very, very deep within the heart. Why? Because these characters, these personalities are absolute. They're real. They're not fictitious. So when we hear from them, then it goes very deep into our hearts. So, and also, then one other example would be the story of Prahlad. How we understand through that story how Prahlad, a little boy, was able to tolerate all the atrocities from his father, all the cruelty from his father. And look at Hiranyakashipu. In spite of all the austerities that he did, he could not even control his anger, and he was ready to kill his own son. So when a person becomes a devotee, he automatically gets decorated with all wonderful qualities of the demigods. Right? So we have to understand that our main purpose of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is to give these spiritual benefits to our children. We understand through Shastra that if we turn towards if you follow the instructions of Prabhupada and Sri Krishna, then material qualifications will automatically come. Why? Because material qualities are simply a servant of the spiritual. You know, they are simply waiting at the door of the devotee, waiting for the devotee to accept them. So when we give them the spiritual, you know, when we follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions on raising our children, which was clearly to give them good character, to give them the, to empower them, to not only to imbibe the readings, the lessons from the scriptures, but also to share it with others. Prabhupada said that if we raise a whole generation of exemplary Vaishnava preachers, that will be the glory of your movement, and that will be the glory of your country as well. But if we lose even one Vaishnava, then that will be a great loss. So Prabhupada's greatest desire for our children was to make them devotees, to make them pure devotees, so that they can give this knowledge to the world. And that will only begin when we teach our children from his books. This knowledge of the Bhagavatam, this knowledge of Prabhupada's books is not just only for adults. Prabhupada's great desire was to have children reading his books right from the beginning. This is an urgent need in our society, is to give our children knowledge from Prabhupada's books, so that by the time they hit their teenager period, they are so well fixed up in this foundation that they will have very few problems in dealing with the world. It's like trying to learn the material through a spiritual perspective. So Bhagavatam provides that, how to understand the material life through the eyes of Shastra. So now I will take you to another section, and which is the academic benefits from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So we understand today, today the employers are looking for people people with critical thinking skills, people who have strong ability to reason, to critically think, because it's gone are the days when it simply meant, especially in schools, in educational institutions, it used to be that children would simply cram up things and they would regurgitate them in the examinations. Now what educational institutions and employers are looking for is people with good thinking, critical thinking skills, so that they can take a problem, they can organize it, look at it critically, separate it, and then present it with their own realizations. Right? And clearly Srimad Bhagavatam gives those skills. We see that how in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in America, for example, when one wants to become a lawyer, what they prefer the prospective student to have is a degree in philosophy. Now, why philosophy? Not because of the philosophical content, but because of the skills that is required to reach philosophical solutions. And so clearly we can see that Srimad Bhagavatam can give those things of critically thinking and logic. Also, Srimad Bhagavatam we have to understand, is not dogmatic. In other words, Krishna doesn't say, you do this, and Arjuna says, yes, Krishna, I will do that. There's a lively conversation between them where Arjuna is arguing with Krishna and presenting with Krishna and saying that, Krishna, I don't understand. Your position is very, very equivocal. You say one thing and then you say the other. Arjuna is asking the same question in 3 different places, in 3 different chapters. He's asking Krishna, Krishna, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to use my intelligence, or do you want me to act? Krishna, do you want me to take sannyas, or do you want me to act? So Arjuna is thinking. he's questioning. So it says that, Prabhupada says that when we study Bhagavad Gita, we are worshipping Krishna with our intelligence. So study of Shastra doesn't mean that we are brainwashing our children. It doesn't mean that we are making them think in a certain way, and they will become. For example, many parents question the fact that is it really practical to teach them from Srimad Bhagavatam? Are they going to lead a life of simply becoming a pujari or a preacher? Will they be able to fit into the society? Enter grahastha ashram, take up a job, and take care of the family. We have to understand that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only talking about Krishna and his pastimes and the pastimes of his devotees, but is very much explaining the nature of this material world. Practically every story that we see is dealing with the struggle in this material world. And their fall downs actually, and how they become successful after taking shelter of Krishna and his devotees. So Srimad Bhagavatam gives the nature of this material world and how to live in it while preparing to go back to Godhead. So now I'll give you an example of how we can study, we can develop these skills through Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just give you one example. And this is again the story of Prahlad Maharaj. Now Srimad Bhagavatam, it teaches by contrast, and that's why children are able to accept it in such a wonderful way, where they learn the hard things of material life, but at the same time they learn the positive aspects of living in this material world and how to overcome the difficulties. For example, we see in the story of Prahlad, how Hiranyakashipu is the greatest demon in history, right? He's the greatest terrorist in history. But in the same story, we see how Prahlad is the greatest devotee. And so we can understand that this world will be full of self-serving leaders, but how to live in this world of self-serving leaders and people who are very demoniac. For example, in the story, the second chapter, we hear of how Hiranyakashipu is literally, throwing a rain of terror, where he's killing cows. He's even killing trees that bear fruits, and anything that gives pleasure to devotees and to Krishna. He's envious of that. And we understand that how these things, through that we understand that how a civilization based on the slaughter of cows and animals and based on killing innocent creatures like trees, is, even though there is bounty in that civilization, even though, especially we see in the West, there's so much money, there's so much wealth, there's bounty. But what kind of bounty it is? A bounty that is based on exploitation, right? Which is based on exploitation of land, of animals. And such bounty we understand through Shastra, is a bounty that will not last, right? That will not last. And we see that in the case of Hiranyakashipu. He was so wealthy. He had, under his grip, he had all the three worlds. He could control the air, the wind, everything, the rain. But what happened in the end, right? Krishna took everything away, and he had to be killed, right? So in the same way, we can teach our children how all this wealth that one obtains through exploitation rather than through honest means is not meant to last, is not permanent. But the wealth that Krishna gives, that is permanent. Hiranyakashipu had to work so hard to become powerful, and had to undergo so much austerity. But look at Prahlad. He got everything without any hard work at all. Why? Because he pleased Krishna. So we teach them by contrast. We teach them the danger of, of developing, of becoming greedy and lusty, and the good benefits of becoming a devotee. So in this way, we teach them, right? And then, of course, when Hiranyakashipu was killing all the trees, you see, the Vedic culture was designed on plentiful, on people having enough so that they can practice spiritual life. There were fruit trees all along the roads. Nobody went hungry because anybody could take a fruit from a tree. But now we see there's hardly any fruit trees, right? So we teach them the difference in the different cultures, and we teach them how to appreciate this culture and how to develop this culture. When we teach our children, not only just reading from Shastra, but we actually help them to live in this culture. This culture provides them a protection. It gives them a protection. It gives them the satsanga by which they can actually grow up to be wonderful devotees. So in this way, we can teach children these critical thinking skills, where we sit together and we actually reason these things out. And I will share with you how to do that in my slide in the next one. So now I will teach you how to, the methodology of how to teach our children Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, this methodology can be applied within a family, where we have 1 or 2 children or 3 children, or it can be done in a school, or with more children. In any scenario, this methodology can be tried. It is, of course, very nice if the teacher or parents, they read the purports ahead of time, at least some purports in a chapter, so that they know ahead of time, and they can make a note against those points, where they can write down what are the things they would like to discuss. But with children, we just read translations. And how do we read? We take turns reading the translations. Why? Because the children, when they get a chance to read, then the mind is trapped. They keep looking out for their turn to read. So they tend to get less distracted. Right? And I do a lot of classes online with children of different age groups. And it's even amazing that even children who are like between 13 and 18, if I forget to call their name for reading, when their turn comes, they always remind me, Mataji, you forgot me. Because children really get hooked to reading. They like to read. And they also tend to pay attention when they're reading. And then after the reading, we discuss it. Now, this discussion is very, very powerful. Why? Today we see in schools, it's always a monologue. The teacher speaks and the student listens. And that becomes boring for the children because it's just a one-way interaction. It's a one-way download. Children simply hear. But in the Vedic times, as we know, the whole Bhagavatam was a discussion between Suta Goswami and the sages. And the sages, represented by Shaunaka Rishi, is asking questions. So this is important. Why? Because it helps, it takes away the monotony of reading, and it helps children, think and reason. They are able to express themselves. They can communicate better. They learn vocabulary, language, grammar, just through communication. And most of all, it takes you from one point to another point. And very soon, you'll realize that you've gone deeper and deeper and deeper. You see, Srimad Bhagavatam can be taught in layers. It's not necessary that we have to teach our children all at once. But as we are discussing, we are amazed. We will be amazed how we can go deeper and deeper through these different layers, And then there comes a time where children are able to share their realization, the reflection time, when they can share what they have learned. And this is the most enjoyable time for the teacher or the parent. When they see the fruit of that discussion for that 1 hour or half hour, or 45 minutes that we've given them, we see the amazing realizations that they receive from this discussion, and realization that is as deep as a realization of an adult. Because as we know, this is the connection with the soul. It has nothing to do with the material body, and it comes deep within the soul. So now I'll give you another example to show you how to use this methodology at different age levels. Just for example, in this, I will share in generally an example that the same story of Prahlad Maharaj, where he was preaching, where Prahlad was preaching to his father, right? And but just in that story of Hiranyakashipu, when he was actually in the second chapter, we'll continue with the second chapter, when Hiranyakashipu, the scene changes and Hiranyakashipu is preaching to his relatives because they are very devastated because of the death of, Hiranyaksha, his brother. So his mother was very in great sorrow, as well as his wife, Rishabhanu. And they were lamenting. And Hiranyakashipu, to our surprise, he's actually preaching the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. And we see that within that story, he's giving a story about this king who, Suhagya, who died in battlefield, and his queens are actually lamenting after they lost their husband, and they wouldn't allow the body to be cremated. And we see this how wonderful, Yamaraj, he comes as a little boy to preach to these queens so that they can give up the body for cremation. And in that purport, Prabhupada talks about so much about the nature of the soul and the concept of dying and death for an attached soul. How for an attached soul, the soul is not able to leave that body. And he's so attached and he's suffering because he wants to get back into the body. And he's also suffering because he's been separated from his loved ones. And I remember I was doing this section with many children, young teenagers, and they were just fascinated with this idea. And we were able to talk very freely about concepts such as cremation and how, how in different cultures they take care of the body in different ways, and how it helps to relieve the soul to move on to the next body. And we were able to talk so many concepts, the afterlife experiences that people go through, at the time of death, so many different concepts, and children were talking very freely, you see. So, and then we talked about, well, death doesn't have to be like that. Remember the idea of contrast? And we were comparing about the death for a devotee and taking examples such as Dhruva's leaving his body, how the plane came to take him, right? And many, many such examples in scriptures, of devotees leaving their body. And it doesn't have to be fearful for a devotee, right? Many, many examples like that we see in Shastra, So in this way, the children, even though this concept of death seems to be very, very scary, but we don't have to live, we don't have to make it in that way. It's a reality of life. And we want to give it to our children in a way that they see the positive side, that yes, it can be very bad, but not for devotees. But for people who are sinful, yes, there is a concept of hell, but those hells are simply meant to condition their minds to the next body, to condition their mind in a certain way. But it's not for a devotee. They simply go to Krishna and they are with Krishna within less than a moment. So in this way, we teach them freely this concept. I did not limit my children to any part of Bhagavatam. I did everything with them and was able to teach them through that the nature of this material world. And today, many, many parents all over the world are realizing that actually these things are facts of life, and they should be given children in a very digestible way, and in a way that they can actually appreciate it. Now I will take you through different age groups, how to teach our children Srimad Bhagavatam through their different age groups. Excuse me. I just want to make sure on the time that I don't go over. Yes, a little bit of time. And I will, now Srimad Bhagavatam can be taught among all age groups. Now there's a group in London, which is called the Baby Bhagavatam group, where they're teaching children early on from 2 to 4 years. They're introducing them Srimad Bhagavatam. What they do is they prepare the chapter in such a way that it becomes great fun for them, right? So I'm going to play you a video, a very short video, audio, sorry, where you can see how do they deal with that. Now they are covering the story of the first canto, chapter 1, so in the first canto. So let's hear that. The meeting of Sutta Goswami with the sages.
Oh my goodness, where are we? Can you hear that, Lally? Where are we?
We're in the forest, Namisaranya.
The forest of Naimisharanya. Oh wow, it's so beautiful here. What can you see?
Chirping birds.
You can see chirping birds.
And loads of trees.
Loads of trees, yes. And look, Lally, can you see? There's so many sages.
And sleeping Goswami.
Yes, you're right.
There he is.
There he is, yes. Oh my gosh, there's many great sages. They've all gathered together to perform a sacrifice for 1,000 years, just because they want to please
Lord Krishna and his devotees.
Yes, they want to please Lord Krishna and his devotees. And who did you say was the leader? Where's the leader?
Sita Goswami over there.
Oh yes, he's over there. Hare Krishna, Sita Goswami.
Hare Krishna, Sita Goswami.
Oh my goodness. The other sages, they're very respectful towards him. Can you see that? Oh my goodness. I wonder why. Why are they so respectful towards him?
Because he's the tallest.
Or the oldest?
Oldest sister.
Oh, I see.
And he knows all the scriptures.
Really? Wow. So he's the oldest out of all the sages. And he knows all the scriptures.
Mataji, the voice is too less now. Is it over?
So, his spiritual master blessed him.
Oh, right. I see. Because he was very good and he listened to his spiritual master. His spiritual master was very pleased with him. His teacher was very pleased. So this is an example of how they are using to create an exciting picture for the
We can't hear you. Hare Krishna Mataji, we can't hear you.
No, Mataji, the voice is quite less.
Hare Krishna Aruddha Mataji, we are not able to hear you. Your voice is not audible.
It's actually too less, Mataji. The voice is there, but it is too less. Maybe the speakers or something needs to be adjusted. We still can't hear you, Mataji. Mataji, maybe you can re-log in. You can exit and re-log in. Probably that can help. Mataji, we can't hear you. We request everyone to please stay connected. Mataji will be joining again.
No, Mataji, the voice is less. I think, Mataji, it would be better if you leave the meeting and join it again. Maybe there must be some problem with speaker or something.
Can you, okay, no. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Okay, sorry. I don't know what happened, but sorry. So let's begin here. So we'll go to the next section, the next age group, and that's 5 to 7-year-olds. It doesn't have to be exactly this age group, but the idea is that children at this age, they're learning how to read. And so we can read to them. Again, we read directly from Srila Prabhupada's books. We read the translations, and then we explain to them what Prabhupada is talking about. And we try to create a nice, interesting, explanation by explaining to them with expressions. A lot of children at this age can read, so they should take turns reading it. But it's amazing how this age group can understand and go so deep within Srimad Bhagavatam. It's just amazing how deep they can go. I'll tell you an example that I experienced with, with one child who I was doing Srimad Bhagavatam with on Skype for quite some time. And we came to the point where, of Dhruva's story, where Dhruva is ready to go back to Godhead. The airplane has come to take him. Nanda and Sunanda is sitting. Beautiful description of the airplane and Nanda and Sunanda. And when this child read that and said, this is so nice. I want to go back to Godhead in this very plane. And then I thought, well, he's a little child. He was like 5 years old.
And I said, okay, yes, one day you can go if you become a nice devotee. And then he kept insisting, no, I want to go. So I told him, okay, if you want to go, then you will have to leave your parents behind. And he said, he started thinking, and he said, no, I don't want to make the same mistake as Ajamal did. Now, he was just 5 years old, and he had read the Ajamal story quite some time ago. And if you know that story, you remember how when Ajamal, he was raised with very nice qualifications, but over time, he actually fell down from a prostitute, and he brought her home, and he had like 8 or 9 children from her. And at the time when he was dying, the Yamadutas had come to take him because he had acted in very sinful ways during his life with the prostitute, having left his wife and parents. And so we see when he was saved by the Vishnu Dutas, then he came back to his senses, and he was feeling very regretful. And one of the things that he regretted was how he had neglected his old parents. And so he remembered that, and he combined the two stories together, the story of Dhruva and the story of Ajamal, and he brought the two together. And then he learned the quality of being grateful, and so many other things he learned through those two stories, right? So we can see we should not underestimate the thinking that even a 5 to 7 year old child, or even can have, the deep understanding he can have. Because like I said, Bhagavatam can be taught in layers. So we learn one layer at a time. Right? And as the children their hearts become attracted to Bhagavatam, they will go deeper and deeper into more deeper layers. So now I remember another child was, how we can teach them comparisons, how they can compare through one story and another and bring them together. And then one time we were doing the Bali Maharaj story, and where Vaman Dev, when he became very, very big, and he covered the entire universe, under his leg. And Bali Maharaj saw himself within that, under Krishna, under Vaman Dev. Then immediately child said, oh, this is just like Mother Yashoda seeing Krishna within the mouth. You see? So children are always thinking and always comparing. And this is so very good for them. Remember the time when I told you about how Srimad Bhagavatam develops critical thinking skills? Well, and helps develop logic and learn by contrast. One thing that I wanted to mention to you is the study of analogies, in Srimad Bhagavatam is so powerful because it helps the children in this critical thinking skills. How, when analogies Prabhupada explains is a very nice way of understanding difficult spiritual concepts, when we learn through material examples, through analogies. The common example that Prabhupada gives is to understand the difference between the body and soul through the analogy of the car and the driver, right? And these are analogies that children can learn and very easily, right? Even it's kind of like abstract thinking. And this is the abstract thinking that teachers are trying to teach now in schools. They're finding it very, very crucial for the children's development, critical thinking development. And this is so easily given in Srimad Bhagavatam when we can give them we can teach them through these analogies, where children imagine, and metaphors are the same similarities, but with a more descriptive flavor, where the imagination goes even wilder, right? For example, when Prabhupada talks about how he's simply the mailman, how he's delivering, just like a mailman, he delivers a letter without opening it. He's giving this knowledge without changing it, right? So the child is imagining a mailman giving the letter and how to understand it with, Prabhupada's example, right? So this is, this is helping the child become very creative and also understand abstract thinking, right? So, and then these analogies, they can become harder and more difficult as time goes, as they learn more, right? For example, the concept of death is shared by Prabhupada in the Shastra through this example of the cat. How it deals with the rat within the mouth, and also deals with the kitten. How the kitten is so fearful of dying, but the kitten is so safe, feeling so safe. How for a death for a devotee is so safe, feels safe in Krishna's hands, but for a non-devotee is so fearful, right? So all these concepts, and they can become more and more difficult, can be taught. And children, even young children of this age group, can appreciate these qualities, right? These analogies. And as the children get older, naturally, the Bhagavatam will look at should become deeper and deeper, and instead of posing questions to them or discussing questions that are simply factual, we introduce deeper questions: how it happened and why it happened. And in this way, the child learns how to see it from a deeper perspective. Now I'll give you maybe, and I remember, I'll share with you some of the things, the questions that I frequently get in my seminars. And these are the questions about adult topics. Parents are very, very fearful and very confused about how to teach children, topics that relate to sex and violence that we find in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we have to understand that children will pick up, information about these topics in material life. If they're going to school, they will pick it up. If they happen to watch television or internet, they may come across things like that. Isn't it better to teach them through Srimad Bhagavatam than through outside sources, where we know the results of that? It's quite plenty in society today. Why? Because Srimad Bhagavatam gives a perspective which is very different, very different. For example, Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us, how to use these things, how to use sex in a way that's pleasing to Krishna for the purpose of procreating good children in this world. And we have examples of that. We have examples of Kashyap Muni and Daksha, who are asked by Brahma to create good progeny to populate this universe, right? And then we have the bad examples also in scriptures by which children learn. And that is the story of Puranjan, right? And the story of Diti and the birth of Hiranyakashipu. So children are able to learn from both sides. The bad aspects of using sex simply for sense gratification, and for using it for the higher purpose. Children learn how in this material world, they understand that this material world is mainly, in this material world, we can see the attraction of the opposite sex between girl and boy, but how we can use this very same attraction for pleasing Krishna. And of course, there are boundaries where we know and we can exercise those boundaries in the discussion. But I read everything with my children, the story of Puranjan, the story of Diti, and through these things, children learned a very important lessons in their life. And they will be very thankful later on in life to have understood it through the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the same thing for violence. We see in pages of Srimad Bhagavatam gruesome violence, right? The story of Parushrama, we hear about the rivers of blood, of hands and legs floating in the rivers of blood. We hear about in Nrsimhadev tearing apart the body, the intestines of Hiranyakashipu and wearing it as a garland. So parents wonder whether these will encourage violence in their children, or are they the same as the violence that children see outside or on television? No, they are not the same. That kind of violence that children see on television is violence meant for sense gratification. It's gratuitous violence where nobody knows. Is meant for one's promotion of one's sense gratification, right? how one can become powerful, how one can kill for the sake of one's own power. Right? But the violence as projected in the Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to root out another violence. When Krishna empowers, a king to do violence, is meant for the other's protection. And we notice how in the 10th canto, how Krishna is the one who does violence. It's not the devotees, it's not the cowherd friends, it's not Mother Yashoda who has to go and kill out, or Nanda Maharaj to kill the demons. Krishna takes that responsibility, right? So what the devotee needs to do is simply take protection of Krishna, and Krishna will do the rest. So in this way, we can teach everything in Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to understand that everything in Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, and it will not have any detrimental effects on our children.
Yes.
So I've given some examples, and I'll end with this one example of Dhruva Maharaj. Now, one thing I have to stress is that it's not necessary to start from the first canto if the children are very small, because it's difficult for them to take all that philosophy. You can begin with a story like Dhruva Maharaj. Why? Because it's easier for them. And there's a lot of philosophy here, a lot of lessons here, right? And as they develop an attraction, and you can do other stories like Gajendra and the crocodile, and Durvasa Muni and Amrish Maharaj, Jai and Vijay story, how they were cursed by the sages, such fun stories, till their hearts are attracted, and then you can begin with the first canto. So here in the story of Dhruva Maharaj, also we hear many, many lessons of, in comparisons between the quality, the nature of Suruchi and Suniti, right? So many different qualities. We see Suruchi's behavior, how she was harsh, cruel, right? Envious. We were discussing the difference between envy and jealousy. And the children were having so much fun understanding how one should not be envious and the detrimental effects of envy, right? So we were relating it to practical life. And then we hear about the quality of Suniti. What a difference, right? In fact, she was telling Dhruva Maharaj, don't be envious, don't take revenge. If you have some desires, you go to Krishna. So she took a very unfortunate situation and she made it very, very fortunate. And I remember we were talking about how to see Krishna in every situation, even if a very difficult situation, right? Then she talked about, she directed Krishna, her son, to Krishna, not to the demigods. How ultimately Krishna is the best mother. How he's equal to millions of mothers. How she could not help, but Krishna could help. He was able to give Dhruva whatever he desired. And then, of course, she did not keep him home. She allowed him to go and do some austerities. In other words, how we should encourage our children to perform the austerities that are needed in becoming Krishna conscious, the austerities that Prabhupada gave us, right? The austerities of chanting, sharing Krishna with others, and practicing in our own life, and following the 4 regulative principles, avoiding television, limiting internet, eating prasadam. All these are austerities for us, and we should not hesitate for our children to also do them. And so questions such as, why the examples, and then when we wanted to go deeper, like for example, why the king did not get a heavy reaction, but Suruchi got a heavy reaction, where she was burnt in that fire, right? So the king did not. Why? Because he's very, very remorseful. So atonement, we talked about atonement, empathy, how we feel sorry, how we should feel sorry for something that we do wrong, right? Not just say sorry, but actually feel the pain of others, and how to take proper solutions for that. So we're learning these things. And then, of course, the last thing is that how Suniti, even though this is for the older children who can understand how, even though Suniti was neglected by her husband and she became an object, of neglect, but how she was not an object of pity, and how she became very glorified as a great Vaishnavi. So how a great devotee is very, very glorious, no matter what kind of circumstances he may be in. One is seen by one's chastity to Krishna. One is seen by one's integrity to Krishna. And throughout this whole story of Dhruva, we see the mother and the son's integrity and chastity towards Krishna. And that is why the success was guaranteed. So among all the difficulties that we face today, what is important is to remain Krishna consciousness. And this point comes very, very strongly in the story of Dhruva. And it really helps in developing their faith in Krishna. Okay, and they love it because it's just about a little boy, right? So it's a lot of fun for them to see how this little boy is doing, he's so determined, right? It helps them in their own determination towards Krishna consciousness. Right. Okay, so I think we should stop here, and I want to just maybe show you one slide about the books here that are available, and I think one of you also has some information on it that you can share with everyone. If anybody would be interested in learning Srimad Bhagavatam, through books, through textbooks, a very big group of devotees around the world are working very hard for several years now to put this out. They are collectively compiling resources on every chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam and on every canto. And these books are designed in such a way that they've actually tried it with their children, and also they are made in a way that is great fun for children to learn. For example, we have activities here that, such as, it begins with a summary of the chapter, and then the questions, easier questions for younger children and more difficult, higher thinking questions for older children. And then we have activities such as critical thinking activities, analogy activities. We have fun activities like acting activities, action activities. We have introspective activities, which helps a child go deep within the heart and to see how it applies to her or him, right? So in this way, and then we have fun things like art projects, crossword puzzles. Some of them chapters have that. So in this way, the children are able to take this philosophy in a way that is digestible. So these books are now available and in India, in Vrindavan, and we have finished actually 3 cantos, and we are now working on the 4th canto. And I would also recommend Homeschooling Krishna's Children, which is published by BVT. And this book, even though it says homeschooling, is actually about parenting. The concepts, the principles that I speak about in this book can be applied for anyone. And one thing I want to mention also, that the study of Srimad Bhagavatam can be done by any parent, whether you're homeschooling or not. Even if your child is going to school, it's more important that you give them the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can do it in the evenings, and you can do it on the weekends. If you can do it every day, it's wonderful, even half hour. Or if you cannot, then you can do it twice a week or once a week. Whatever you give will be very, very valuable to them. So now I will stop, my seminar. Thank you very much for being such a good listeners, and I will give it over to Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. It was a very enlightening talk. Thank you very much, Mataji. Very practical tips you mentioned. So now I open the forum for questions. There are a lot of questions in the chat section on Zoom as well as Facebook both. So I'll go one by one. So a parent is asking that for a newcomer, can you tell me some simple ways to inculcate the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam into my homeschooling? What can be the practical steps of relating the spiritual knowledge to the academic material knowledge?
Oh, okay. Yes, well, it can, if you want, what I did was I based my language arts through Srimad Bhagavatam, but then I also had a math book. So for the first 12 years of their life, I taught them simply language and math. And also there were like 5 R's that I did, the 5 R's. And that was, reading, writing, arithmetic, which is math, and raga, which is music, and rote, which is memorization. So I had these 5 R's, okay? So reading and writing, language skills, I did through Srimad Bhagavatam. And then of course I had math book, and then we do memorization, shlokas and things, and then music. So Bhagavatam can be, English can be taught through Srimad Bhagavatam by taking, one can do discussion, does a lot of it. Like I mentioned earlier, the communication, the vocabulary. It's amazing how you can teach vocabulary through Srimad Bhagavatam. And because it's done through context, for example, I remember teaching one boy, and we were reading, and there was a sentence there which said that the whole place was drenched with water, was drenched with water. So I asked him, I said, what do you think it means, drenched with water? And he said, soaked. Because it's easy to understand through context. Vocabulary becomes easy when you're reading and you understand through the process of reading, right? And if you were to give a child words separately, it becomes a chore for him. It becomes very difficult. Oh my gosh, I have to do so many words now, right? But you teach them. Of course, you can do it separately too. I mean, later on, you can have 5 words depending on the age of the child, and you can ask him to check the dictionary, teach him how to use the dictionary, and make sentences out of that, right? You can do like that as well. Writing work will be needed, or you can give here, later on, but I taught a lot through orally, and then, but you can also, and I did some writing work, you can give some questions and things like that, and like that, you can teach language skills. And I mentioned to you about analogies, metaphors, all this is automatically coming through Srimad Bhagavatam. But you can always have a workbook, an outside workbook, if you're not feeling confident, if you're worried about how to teach him through Srimad Bhagavatam. It's okay to introduce these books from outside, because the requirements in in the country may be different and things like that. So feel free to do that. I'm just giving you what I did, and you can adjust it to what you feel confident in how you want to teach language skills through Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So basically, that's my answer to that. Mhm.
Yes, Madhuri. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So Madhuri, the next question is that I have so many shortcomings in my behavior. So how can I become a role model for my child?
This is a very nice question. I also worried about that. So the way it is, when I started teaching Srimad Bhagavatam with my children, I was a new devotee. Believe me, I had not touched Srimad Bhagavatam before. We were running a preaching center, and later on we were running a restaurant. There was just so much seva to do. But what I did was I did it with them. So I was facing many, many anarthas as well. But when I did with them, then I also learned with them. As they were advancing, I was advancing, right? And it became, Srimad Bhagavatam inspired me to improve and to do better, and to have the inspiration to give this knowledge to them. We will always have the upper hand. Why? Because we are adults. It's not like we are at their level. We will always have lessons for them and be able to teach them in a way that they can benefit. So not to worry about it. You can be even high school educated, and you can teach Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't have any material designations. Our intelligence is not taken by our degrees. Our intelligence is when we understand Krishna. Okay.
Thank you, Madhuri. The next question is, Madhuri, a parent wishes to homeschool the child. So how to start and how to go about the syllabus?
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole different area.
So, and that Prabhuji is saying that I have strength in few subjects, but does not have in the other, like you said about astronomy and other physics and all. So also he says that I have not read Srila Prabhupada books. So how to systematically go about it?
Well, like I said, I also hadn't read Srimad Bhagavatam. Read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam with them, all the 12 cantos with them, you know. So you can do the same, you know, in terms of lack of spiritual knowledge. And then the point is how to, you know, in terms of the details of how to do homeschooling, I think we should talk about it later, since that is a very special question, you know, a limited, very specialized question. Not everybody may be needing an answer on that. So we can wait on that, and maybe I can connect with her later. Okay.
Okay, Mataji. So Mataji, the next question is only homeschooling sufficient for future development? What about their higher education, admissions and all?
Yes. So homeschooling in India
Maybe you
can be
can tell
done.
from your
Yeah. Well, no. In India, there are some devotees who are homeschooling, and it can be done. And you can actually connect with them. There's National Institute of Open Schooling, National Institute of Open Schooling, that is NIOS, which is very, very something that's been going on for a long time. It was initially started for children who, you know, of very, very influential rich people who didn't want to send their children to school. So they would teach their children at home, okay? And it was also done by people in the village, you know, people who were, you know, in the villages as well, you know, who wanted a private way of teaching their children. So both ways it was working. And I believe if you get into that and you find out and you go online, you'll get enough information of how you can do that. It's basically you're allowed to homeschool in any way you want to, and you can actually give exams in certain grades. They have examinations. For example, they may have an examination at the level of an 8th grade, or, and I'm not quite sure. And then they'll have another examination at the level of 10th grade. So in other words, you will eventually have to do the outside curriculum in order to do those examinations, okay? So it's not, so what I did was I did Bhagavatam for the first 12 years, and then it just so happened accidentally, they went to college. Now there are many devotees all over the world who are also experimenting with sending their children directly, skipping high school and sending them directly to community colleges. Now in America, those colleges are like university, but they are not exactly university, which prepares them later on for universities. So this helps them skip the hard years of high school. In America, high school years are very, very difficult for children socially, culturally, and you know, value-based in terms of values. Very, very, even karmis, they regret going to high school. The peer pressure is so bad. And I know the schooling in India is not lagging, you know, is catching up with those Kali Yuga effects, right? It's not like it's all very perfect, right? So so they avoid that, you know, conscientious parents, even karmi parents, conscientious parents, they're skipping regular public school, and you know, good Christian parents, they're teaching their children to school at home, because they don't want to put their children through all that, through all the high school. And so I would highly recommend that you find avenues like that, and then go to see if you can find, and at least, you know, and there's nothing lacking in that, you know, children can go to colleges. For example, in NIOS, it doesn't stop these children who do homeschooling through NIOS. They are not, they are given admission in colleges. So if you check that out, it's not like it bars them. It doesn't, because you give regular examinations, you know, the CBSE or whatever that is, you actually go through all that, which prepares them for college life, you know, for universities. So just try to find out, connect with devotees who are homeschooling there, and you will find that it's not very difficult to homeschool in India, and children are not, you know, stopped from higher education. What I see the greatest benefit is teaching us children proper values, and 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 avoiding all the negative association that we find in schools. It's such a struggle to try to bring them back into spiritual consciousness, having been exposed to 8 hours of material consciousness. The best time in their day is being exposed to this kind of consciousness. If you can do it, do it. And if you cannot do it, take shelter of Prabhupada and his books, okay, and do your best. But I will definitely, naturally, I would recommend trying to find an alternative way of education.
Thank you, Mataji. There are two questions which are very related. One parent is asking that the kids develop very hate feelings when they read about the demons. So how to develop that higher understanding that bad activities are due to their ignorance. And also one mother is asking that when I tell Narsimha's story to my child and when Hiranyakashipu is killed, so he is quite scared. So how to tell, how to explain that meaningfully.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just explained in my discourse that actually we have to teach them by contrast. Okay. Now Hiranyakashipu is such a demon, and he's in the mode of ignorance. But what about Prahlad? So they learn by contrast. So demons have this quality, but there's devotee qualities, right? Which is so. Actually, Prahlad is the hero of the story, not Hiranyakashipu. Not even Nrsimhadev. Prahlad is the hero, right? So we focus on that, and we explain to them that yes, there will be people who will be like this, that will be bad. This is the nature of material life. We can't hide it from them. This is when they go out in the world, they're going to hear and see about people. And if you teach them through the pages of Shastra, it's much more effective, because through the process of hearing, they actually experience material life. Not directly, but through the process of hearing. It's very, very powerful. So teach them by contrast. And regarding violence, again, I mentioned that violence will not have a detrimental effect on them. It will not have a detrimental effect on them, because that violence is presented with a perspective. It's meant for the good. It's meant for the good of society. When demons overrun, Krishna comes to kill because he cares about the good citizens. How can anybody practice Krishna consciousness if the whole society is overrun by demoniac people, right? So there has to be violence. There's enough violence we see out there, but that violence is very, very bad. And if children watch that kind of violence on television, yeah, sure, it will have a detrimental effect on them. They will become violent in their own life. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji. So, Mataji, we have received a question on Facebook that when I start teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to kids, which canto should I start with?
Oh, well, like I said, if they don't have enough exposure as yet to Srimad Bhagavatam, I would start with a story like Dhruva Maharaj or Prahlad Maharaj, one of these stories, and then later on, just go back to Canto 1, Volume 1. When you see they're ready for it, you will know they're ready for all that philosophy. They're ready. Okay.
So we should start with stories and not canto. Yes, Mataji?
In the beginning.
Okay.
When you start out, just to develop their traction, because they can't wait. When they read these stories, they can't wait. And then you go back. If you rush too much, then they may find. And I would recommend going, adjusting the speed accordingly. I would take do a chapter a day, and that would take me, if it's too big, then it would be in 2 days. If it's got 80 verses or 70 verses, then it would take 2 days. But something like 30, 40 verses, 1 day, 1 hour, okay, 45 minutes to 1 hour. You don't want to go too slow, because then children get, it becomes too much for them. And you don't want to read purports with them until they're ready, better you read the purports and bring the points that Prabhupada is making to them, so they're not missing out, Okay.
Yes, Mataji. And Mataji, a parent is asking, what should the sequence of our while we are teaching Prabhupada books to them? So, for example, which book should we start with, and then which one? I mean, after Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, well, that's a long way, isn't it? Srimad Bhagavatam is so big. But you could start with, you can go directly to Bhagavatam because it's in the form of stories, but you can always teach them Bhagavad Gita on the side, if you want to, like you can do a couple verses every day, something. The reason why Srimad Bhagavatam becomes very effective is because it's stories, it's natural. And the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is within the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? It's not like they're missing out. However, you can do Bhagavad Gita as well, or any other book, any other scripture. And after Srimad Bhagavatam, you can do Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's also, there's one group that I've been doing for several years now, and we are on the 11th canto, and we are, after 12th canto, we plan to go to Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now this group has studied the entire Bhagavatam, studied with me, and it's been like 5 years now. So yeah, you can do something like, see, it's only 5-6 years of their life and how much they gain. I did homeschooling for like 6 years of their life, and they were off in college, So it was not so difficult, There were struggles, of course, a lot of struggles. Okay.
Mataji, a parent is asking that my child doesn't show interest in introspective questions, but she's interested in shloka recitation. So how to inculcate her nature for values?
Well, don't teach Bhagavatam just by the values. Teach them like it is, like the stories, and the values will come. You see, you teach them, you go deep into the story. We don't try to do, we don't start the chapter saying that we're going to learn today, what are the lessons we're going to learn from Dhruva Maharaj's story. No, we don't want to make it like a textbook. Srimad Bhagavatam has to be appreciated the way it is. And the values will come. We don't point fingers at them and say, see, you behave like this, but Dhruva behaved like this. Then this way they become very, very, they take Bhagavatam very negatively. They see it as pointing out to them, right? So even though we're trying to make it practical, better we just, do the stories, and then they are learning automatically how it applies to their life. They will see, they will change, they will see those lessons. That's very important that I want to mention, is that we don't put them in a spot and mention their negative qualities, or we don't give them a textbook-like experience. Okay.
Also, the same parents is asking, how can I make my child independent, because she needs more appreciation and wants me every time.
Yeah, just by involving her in the discussion, by making her feel that she's so special. And when she gives a realization, to give a lot of praises, and to say, wow, you're just so good. Did you see how good you were? And to keep encouraging the child's ability to do well. That's very important. The encouragement factor is very, very important, to make a child feel very special, and how he can share. And even a child who's shy, to bring him out or her out by encouraging, by asking simple questions, and building up her confidence in thinking, in the process of thinking. Okay.
Yeah, Mataji, if you allow, can I ask you 1-2 more questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What time did we begin? Yes, it's fine. I mean, I'm okay with the time. It's all up to you. Yeah.
I'll take up last 2 questions then. So one question is that my daughter is insisting me to start Srimad Bhagavatam with her. She knows the stories from Krishna book, which I have been reading with her. She's 7-year-old now. So should I begin with first canto now?
So she did the Krishna book with her. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it depends on her development. If you feel that she's ready for that, you can. But I would try some story first and get her heart attracted to that, to Srimad Bhagavatam, before you do first canto, because it just will help. So do just at least 1 or 2 stories before you do first canto. Okay.
Okay. And if you recommend reading Srimad, do you recommend reading Srimad Bhagavatam from some reference book that we find in ISKCON centers, because they contain pictures and are in short, and so kids find it more engaging? So
yeah, well, for an older child, like a 9-year-old child or something, then I would recommend going directly to Prabhupada's books, because she's ready. Why not? You have to understand that Prabhupada's books are very, very potent. If we study directly from those books, the result that we get is far greater than any other version. you see, because the books teach for themselves. So I would definitely recommend teaching directly from Prabhupada's books.
Yes, Mataji. And one parent is asking that how long should the reading sessions last according to different age groups?
Well, it depends how much, I generally do a 1 hour session with children, even younger children and older children, and I'm able to do it, and I've never had a problem with doing that. And it depends how much we cover. It depends on the discussion. Sometimes the discussions take us deep into it. We're not able to even finish half the chapter. With older children, the discussions go deeper. So we're not able to cover the whole chapter maybe. And sometimes with younger children, you may be able to cover the whole chapter in 1 hour. So it depends, because they may not be open to very, very deeper discussions, But I would encourage everyone to go as deep as possible, though. It's amazing how much they can take. Yeah.
So I received a question that I live in a joint family, and with grandparents, the kids are also involved in watching TV and mobile. So how do you what do you suggest how to manage the child?
Oh yes. Well, you will have to talk to your husband and ask him to maybe help out. Sometimes that helps a lot. Talking to his parents, and because that is more effective, and your husband could talk to his parents and explain to them that this is not something that you want to expose the children. They can maybe watch when the children are asleep, and maybe adjust the timing. You have to be very, very clear and firm, because watching TV can be very, very detrimental in a child. You may be doing everything, and then they watch TV, and then it's all gone, finished. You see, what is the point? So you have to be firm about that, and you have to talk and make adjustments accordingly.
Okay.
Mhm.
So a parent is asking that sometimes the same story in Srimad Bhagavatam goes for many chapters. So we should read all the translations, or we can skip to some of translations in between and tell the gist to the child.
Yeah. So there's areas of Srimad Bhagavatam which become quite difficult, cumbersome. For example, the prayers. We see so many prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Prayers by Gajendra, prayers by Queen Kunti. Practically every chapter has these beautiful prayers. So we still read through them, but we don't have to wait and discuss every one of them. That's the point. I don't think we should skip anything. Okay. Now with little children who cannot read so much, then that's different, where they're struggling to even read, then you can skip this chapter, but for children who are fluent in reading, then we shouldn't skip it. And then you can take just one essential point in those prayers and discuss that. We don't have to discuss every purport that you have read or every translation. That we don't have to do. So in difficult areas, you just take one essential point, a couple of essential points, and do that. I remember reading the prayers by, the Narayan Kavach prayers by the demigods, when they were praying to the Lord and for protection in the story of Ritasura. And they were, that was really fun for the children, because the demigods were praying to all the weapons of Krishna. And so we were talking about how in the different stories, how the different weapons killed demons and protected devotees. So we made it like a fun thing, So you can pick out something fun in those prayers and let them see that even prayers can be a lot of fun, you see, but without waiting on every verse, you see. So just to give them the feeling that everything in the Bhagavatam is so important and so special. I would not skip anything, but you can make adjustments, With older children, I wouldn't recommend skipping anything. Okay.
Yes, Mataji. And Mataji, a 5-year-old daughter is interested in knowing about what Yamraj does to bad people. So when she came across this incident while exploring Bhagavatam in 5th canto, so how should I tell her?
No, say that again. 5th canto, what did she read? Yamaraj said, what?
Yeah, my 5-year-old daughter is interested in knowing about what Yamraj do with bad people. So she came across this while she was independently exploring Bhagavatam 5th canto. So what should
Yeah,
I
that's
say?
right. Oh, yeah. You know, there's a side in our children which loves, loves war and all types of heavy things. There's a side, a psychology in all of us that that's why children like to see horror movies, right? So, so don't be afraid of that, because you just have to explain to them that these punishments done by Yamaraj is meant for a purpose. It's meant for sinful people who've been very, very sinful. And because of that, they will be put into bodies that animal bodies. And for that, Yamaraj, they're punished and they are given, they're conditioned to think in that way. A human being cannot become a dog and think like a dog, right? He has to be given that conditioning of a dog before he takes the body of a dog. So those hells are meant for that conditioning of the mind and is not meant for devotees. Devotees don't even enter those places. What does Yamaraj tell his messengers? Don't go near devotees. Leave them alone, right? So you explain to them that, this is people who are sinful. They have to be conditioned in that way. Okay, so take that fear out by giving them the confidence that there are people who are like that and they have to be dealt like that. Just like the police, they have to catch bad people and they have to punish them sometimes severely, right? So there will be people like that.
That was very practical, very nice. Mataji, the next question is that
It's okay because I gave 2 hours, right? So there's still 15 minutes there, and
thank
you
you
can.
so much. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
The questions are just pouring in the chat section, so
Oh yeah.
I
Okay.
can't
Okay.
help myself. And all the questions are very important. Thank you so much for the wonderful answers, Mataji. One
Okay.
mother is asking that the kids appreciate Krishna conscious process, but they are too attached to watching few selective TV programs because they see a lot of new adventure and excitement, and they feel that we have heard all the Krishna stories.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 The problem is the medium. You may find good content sometimes on television. There are channels where they have educational shows. The problem is there's always commercials that are coming within those channels, right? So the children are seeing those commercials, and then on top of that is the medium that's very bad. Is the addiction. Nobody, a child who's watched a show will not want to stop watching it. He wants to watch more and more, and that becomes an addiction, which is very difficult to control. Television is not a good way of learning either. You don't pick up facts through television. Why? Because it's a one-way download from the brain to from the tube to the brain. There's no interaction. The children is not learning, is not becoming creative. It's better they learn through books. If they really like to watch, give them some books from the library. Better they do it through books. Because addiction through this kind of media is very, very detrimental to them, and it's very hard to stop. And it leads to more and more television watching, and also it exposes them to many things that we don't want them to see, sinful things. It breaks all the four regulative principles, the very principles we are asking them to follow in future as well as now. They're going to, it's all about breaking them on television, right? But through books it's more contained, right? So if they enjoy something, they can read books. That's what I would do. I didn't have a television at home. There was a screen, there was a television, but it did not connect. So we used it for sometimes to watch Krishna conscious videos, and the children never missed it because it wasn't there. You see, I never grew up with television, you know. So, but internet, obviously internet, they cannot completely give up because of schools and, and the requirements nowadays in America. But even that, I talk about limiting it very strictly, limiting it. So that is not this forum, I suppose, of talking about internet and television. So we'll go on to the next question. This is a whole different area. Yeah.
Yes, Mataji. And Mataji, one parent is asking that can we show Ramayan by Ramanand Sagar to them, or maybe for that matter, Krishna episode, Little Krishna or Mahabharata.
I
They
think,
can show them
yeah.
these episodes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, when children, Mahabharat, yeah, and Ramayana, these are nice shows, especially Ramayana was very nice, well done. The thing is that you can limit it. Like, I know, we would do like once a week for half hour or 1 hour. The whole family would come together and watch Ramayana. So the children know there's limits to it. Because like I said, the problem is the medium, the addiction. That's what the danger is, you see. So if you limit it once a week, where one parent at least comes together with the child and watches, then it becomes a nice thing. But don't do it frequently. Okay, that's my whole point. So Krishna conscious videos are better than karmi things, but then also you should try to limit those things. Try to spend time with the child, reading something nice or doing some fun Krishna conscious activity also, playing a game, Krishna conscious game, something where children, if you need relaxation type thing, then try to find those avenues than sitting together in front of a television. That is the worst way of trying to spend time together, for everyone. But then, of course, Krishna conscious videos can be watched, but very limitedly. Okay.
So while reading Bhagavatam, my son learned that it's bad to eat onion, garlic, and non-veg. So when he sees the relatives doing that, he wants to show them Bhagavad Gita, but my relatives are following Mayavadis, so they will not understand. So how should I tackle this situation?
Okay. Well, the thing is that these are very crucial things for a devotee, is to not eat onions and garlic and to be able to offer the food. How do we offer the food without onions and garlic? Very difficult, right? Impossible. Right? So these things will have to be shared. And like I said, if the husband's parents, the best person would be the husband rather than the wife. The girl cannot approach her in-laws and tell them that, but the son can. So I would approach it through the husband, where they make it very clear that, this is what he wants, and this is how he believes in, and this is how it's going to be done. And if they want to eat onions and garlic, they can eat it raw on the side. They can bring the onions at home, and then while they're eating, they can eat it raw. But to cook it in the food is not possible. No. One cannot practice Krishna consciousness with cooking onions and garlic in the house. So a good way out would be to eat it raw for them. They can bring that. And then on the side, you'll have to explain to the children that they cannot eat that, right? Right? They cannot eat that, but because our standards are different, and that you help to make them convincing by reading Bhagavatam, because that will come up. That's the wonderful thing about reading Bhagavatam. All these issues come up, and you're able to give them this faith that this process is very good. You see, so it's an all process. It's a full package, that we give them. The practical side, the theoretical side, and try to give them good examples of our own life. But somebody has to speak out, right? Yeah.
So Mataji, a parent is asking that my kids are very much influenced by laptop and mobile. During this pandemic time, how do I engage them more meaningfully? Because there is a lot of time at home.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's see. There are some very nice Krishna conscious online things going on. The more, devotees are coming out with creative ideas how to engage the children online. So try to access those things instead of accessing, karmi things. Keep the children busy in activities at home, do artik and do chanting at home together as a family, have music, do reading, and then play games with them, Krishna conscious gave to them. And the times where you're busy, then you can have them also help you, and give them, ways where they can cook with you. You're cooking, you have them cook with you, engage them in cooking. Why not? Engage them in helping out with laundry. Engage them in practical devotional things with you. Now, the problem is when children are going to school, they just they are in a whole different mentality, and it's harder to pull them into this type of consciousness. That's the challenge, because there's so much peer pressure and things like that in school that they come home with a whole different mentality. And now they continue with that mentality, right? To now how to rewire now everything, right? Very difficult. But however, just by encouraging them, giving them the positive side of Krishna consciousness, showing them how joyful Krishna consciousness can be, rather than always showing them, presenting it to them like a burden, that things out there are more fun. Problem, it is challenging during pandemic time because you cannot go to the temple, you cannot associate with devotees, but try to, there's naturally more sacrifice on your part now. How to find time for the children, how to engage them in different ways where they can survive, this pandemic and without getting, sidetracked, okay? But we have to remember the more materialism we give them, the more they're going to be in that. We have two options, yeah.
Also, Mataji, during the pandemic time, you tend to be very frustrated and show your anger on your child. So the child does not forget that, and the child, holds to that. So how to tackle this situation?
Yes. See, the children learn they are actually very sharp. Children are actually very smart. They don't need a picture perfect environment to become Krishna conscious. Actually, it's detrimental for them. What they need is how to take those struggles, those challenges, and how to see it in a Krishna conscious way. How these things in life will happen, where somebody loses their temper or has a conflict, but how to take these situations and use it in a positive way, in a positive way where we can, realize that, through the study of Srimad Bhagavatam and realize our mistake and learn through that process, So children don't need a perfect environment to become Krishna conscious, okay? So in other words, if somebody is getting angry, then if you are unnecessarily getting angry for no reason, then you can always tell the child, I'm sorry, I lost my temper on you, but see, Krishna, is so merciful that we are learning from this process. You can talk about it to the child. You can say that you lost your temper in a really bad way, and the child understands that yes, my parents are not perfect, but we are all devotees, and we are trying to do our best, So don't worry about these little things, Just try to do the best as you can,
My 4-year-old daughter makes comments like eggs and meat. It's not good. At the same time, we are living in Australia where all around us are having it. I don't want to discourage her from her belief, but not comment on to others' food. So how can I make her understand this?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, a 4-year-old is hard for a 4-year-old, right? So it's also to understand the difference. But also when you teach the child at home, then you tell them that you explain to them there will be people who actually do these things, eat these things, but they're innocent. They don't know. And one day when they turn towards Krishna, they will know. In other words, we give them that element of compassion. We teach them this element of compassion, that the whole world is not perfect. There are people out there who are doing all these kind of bad things. However, they are also spirit souls. They are also Krishna's children, and they should be respected. Okay, but that doesn't mean we follow that, but they should be respected. Because one day they will turn towards Krishna. There are many devotees in our movement who have eaten all this. But today they are sadhus, right? Today they are sadhus. Okay, so this way they learn that people are not, so they learn a little bit, but this way, yeah.
And nothing, when they come from school, they feel that the other children are getting all the facilities, having all the, for example, chocolates or going out for a foreign trip or something like, etc., etc. So how to deal with them that they are getting the best of everything?
Well, yeah, that's why the study of Shastra is so important. So important, the study of Shastra. You see, because otherwise they'll keep thinking that, oh, they're so lucky out there. I'm the one who's being deprived, right? But through the study of the Shastra, they understand that they are the ones who are so lucky that they can avoid horrible things like meat and eggs and things like that, which is, you explain to them what meat eating means. They will know, they know, right? How cow is in so much pain, or pigs, or whatever, or lambs, in so much pain. They cry, they have babies. How can they be more fortunate than you if they're eating, they're giving so much pain to animals, right? How can they be happy if they're giving pains to chickens? So in this way, they understand that they are not better off, right? And in terms of having fun in school, well, that is a challenge sometimes, right? But the point is that you have to make, if you're planning to homeschool, then you have to make homeschooling also enjoyable for them, And then when they develop a certain routine and a rhythm at home, then they don't miss it, right? And they are meeting their friends, right? It's not like we completely isolate them from everything. So we give them enough exposure.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So one question, Mataji, from my side. My daughter is 1.5 years old. So, how can I start teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to her? Because you mentioned in your slides from 2 to 4 years. So what to do with 1.5-year-old kid?
So the way to do it is to show her pictures. I mean, she may not be even ready for that and may tear up the picture, but you can start like that. You make get pictures from Bhagavatam copied out, and like board books. They're called board books, right? And they don't tear up. Like you put the picture on a cardboard, you stick it on a cardboard, and then you show. So she cannot tear up that picture. And you make a whole stack of them, and then you show her the pictures. See, Krishna is doing this in this one. See, he's killing the demon Agasura or something, Krishna is washing Sudama's feet, So you take pictures from the Bhagavatam, blow it out, put it into 8 by 10, cardboard, and then you flip through them and show them. So this way the child, and this is one way a small child can be actually taught, Srimad Bhagavatam. And you keep repeating. Children that age they'll love repetition. So you keep repeating those same pictures again and again, okay? And they'll never get tired. You will get tired, but they will not get tired. So that's one way, okay, to do that. And of course, the toys are there. Try to make the toys very Krishna conscious, Remind them of Krishna and his pastimes when they're playing with toys, remind them. So children naturally do those things, they'll play with toys and cooking utensils. All you have to do is keep reminding them of Krishna. Keep engaging them. That's the best way to raise a child that small, actually, because they will do what they have to do. They will play. They will, make a mess, right? They will do all kinds of naughty things. Just make them Krishna conscious in that process. Have her offer an apple on the altar, even though she's dropping half the things, have her or him, do these things, help out in this way, or make different things, play with toys, Lego and stuff, like that.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, keeping the time in mind, I will ask the last question now.
Yeah, I'm okay with going a little over. It's okay if people are really anxious, then I can go over. But I'm okay stopping as well. So it's up to you. If there's very urgent questions and a few more questions you'd like me to answer, I'm okay with it.
So Mataji, there are 2 questions. So maybe we can take those 2 questions and
yes.
that be fine.
That will be very good because I have another one after an hour. So that's fine. Yeah. So that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be very quick then, Mataji. The question is, if a community school is there, so should we prefer that over homeschooling, because homeschooling is very challenging for everyone?
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
Yes. Community school is fine. And I know there's a few temples with community schools. That'll be great. It's homeschooling is an option when you don't have a community school. It's a good option, you know. If you already have a school which is supported by devotees and things, definitely I would do that, you know. But yeah, for example, Pune, you know, they have a school there, right? And I'm not sure about Delhi. You know, I think they have a school there as well, right? Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Mhm.
Okay. And next question is that how important is it for the children to keep fast on Ekadashi? Because it's a 4-year and 7-year-old mother who is asking this. Because
Ekadashi 4 and 7, yes, that's yeah, difficult for them. So you can begin, you know, if they don't want to fast, don't push them. The main thing is not to give them grains. That's the main thing, and that itself is a big challenge, right? For children that end, they always want the wrong things on that day. They want this or that, chapati or something. So that's itself is such a big challenge to have them not eat grains. If you can just keep that challenge together and not have them, that's a big success. Now, if they can't fast, okay, and they cry, oh, I want to fast. Well, let them fast for maybe till 12 noon. Begin with 12 noon and see how they do, if they can fast. And if they can fast, then try with little bits, you know, and not do a whole fasting or whatever, you know. Yeah. So that's my answer. Yeah.
okay, Madhaji. And the last question is that the two children who starts fighting for everything to be wanting to be first always. So how to tackle that, because they are used to success only.
Oh, yeah. They always want to be first. Well, there's very nice stories in Srimad Bhagavatam, which talks about uh, successes and failures. The story of Vritasura when he's preaching to Indra, you know, how victory and defeat is not up to us, you know, due to due to our karma, we are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. So we will not be always victorious, right? Vritasura was in the beginning he was victorious. He was, you know, he was able to defeat Indra, but then later on he lost, right? Only Krishna can be always victorious. So through Bhagavatam, you can teach them and they become actually pacified. You know, I've seen changes in children where they have such a drive. Some children have such a drive to be always the best. And gradually they become more compassionate and more giving. So the hearts change as you read Srimad Bhagavatam. They become more and more pacified. They become more giving, you know. So just read Bhagavatam with them and in this way they will become purified.
Okay. So, Mataji, you just allow, there is one more question on Facebook. Only if you allow, I'll ask it.
Okay, yes.
This will be the last question. My 5-year-old son is interested in hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, but does not feel encouraged about chanting even a single round. How to
Oh,
go about it?
5-year-old. Yeah, that's a challenge. I don't think you should push a 5-year-old child to chant because it can have negative effects. We will wait for them to become inspired, or you can try some trick like you can give them beats that are not 108, but maybe 10 beats or something, and or 8 beats, and you have them chant. Small. You know, they will know, a 5-year-old will know that this is a smaller beat, right? Japa beat. I was suggesting this for really younger ones, like 2-year-olds. You can give them beats that have very few beats in there, japas that are very few beats. But for a 5-year-old, don't push him. You know, there will come a time just through your example and through the example of other children, he will want to chant. And they learn best in peers, with peers, you know. When other children are chanting, then they'll take up the beat and they'll start chanting, right? And or when they see their parents chanting, then they like to chant. So try to chant with them, and gradually they will become encouraged, you know, when you chant with them. Okay. that will be a very encouraging factor for them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mataji. We are so grateful to you for your
Thank you.
time. Although we went a little over time, but we
No,
are
no,
very sorry for that, Mataji. But thank you
no,
so
no.
much for the wonderful practical answers you gave. So I would, if you allow Mataji, so I would just like to brief about the books that Mataji has written to everyone. Vidyavati Mataji, can you just share the screen once again so that our audience can come to know about the book?
Yes, Mataji, I'll do it. So I shared the contact number of Sushma Mataji on the group, so that devotees can contact her and can tell their orders to her. If we have a bulk order from devotees, then the publisher has agreed upon to give us a discount of more 30%. So these are the books. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, it has 2 volumes, and then Canto 2 has 1 volume, and Canto 3 again has 2 volumes. So the first canto has 2 volumes. It will be 590 rupees each, and second canto is for 745 for the single volume, and the third canto will also be more or less the same price as the first canto. So, and there the book about homeschooling the kids, that will also be available. So if we have orders for that, so we'll be able to tell the charges to devotees. So everyone can contact Sushma Mataji for that. I'll again send her number on the chat section, and then we can together make a group order and get the possible discounts.
As Mataji said that, these books are highly recommended because we know that studying the scriptures, the children can gain the spiritual knowledge and language and reasoning skills. And most importantly, they gain the devotion to Krishna. We highly recommend these books, Homeschooling Krishna's Children, because it gives strong Krishna conscious values while giving them strong academic education. So we highly recommend these books. Also, the Srimad Bhagavatam, a comprehensive guide. It has key themes. Also, there is chapter by chapter summary. There are so many fun and educational activities. So the main aim is that you cultivate in your children lifelong love for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can note down the number, and we would highly appreciate if you can make a group order. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mataji. Once again, Mataji, we really hope to hear from you again and again. And thank all parents and teachers also for being present till the end of the session and hearing so patiently that you asked. We also feel so much benefited. Thank you so much, all. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
end the meeting now.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Being so patient. So patient while we went through all those little technological, difficulties. Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Bol. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You all can message us because these messages will not be saved. So if you can message us directly on the numbers that were there in the group. You can note down my number 98684248180. I've already posted it 98684248180. Thank you everyone for joining. And we invite you all to join our next session by Hagresh Jaidani Mataji from Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Dandavat.